Hello, everyone. Good evening. Today's story that we're going to talk about isn't just the one in the title. First, I'll tell you about the one in the title. There's a little something else hidden later on that we'll talk about in a bit. Let me quickly tell you about what kind of strange sounds were coming from inside this school. This story happened at a music institution in Sansan province. Of course, it's not a university. It seems to be similar to a vocational school or an arts high school. The protagonist who told me this story is a student at this school. When he was in his second year of high school, this school underwent a large-scale relocation. About 70% of the classes in the school moved to the new campus. Our protagonist was one of the students who moved. The entire story that follows after arriving at the new campus, all the students found it very hard to adjust. Why? Because this campus, although called a new campus, was actually a renovated old theater. When you hear theater, you know something's about to happen. This theater was from a very old era, apparently with some connection to the Japanese before liberation. Later, for some reason, by sheer chance, it was sold to this school. When the school bought this theater, they had already heard rumors that this place had some rather frightening stories associated with it. However, the school administration felt the price was too cheap, which was very attractive, so they didn't consider what might happen later. Later, the school, in a daze, did some simple renovations and moved the students in to this new campus. Our protagonist, after moving to the new campus, was the first to notice something was off about the school. One evening, our young protagonist met up with 3 classmates behind the new campus in an old, large theater. These boys were planning to secretly have a smoke. This isn't anything new. Many of us have had similar experiences, not studying well in high school, secretly carrying a lighter or a pack of cigarettes. Since there were many people going, no one thought about fear or anything like that. They were just fooling around and ran to a grassy area behind the old theater. Because this grassy area blocked by the theater, no school administrators could see this. These few people here, they were so relaxed. Sneakily, they started smoking. In his memory, they had only been smoking for 3 or 4 minutes when suddenly one of the students said, "Everyone be quiet for a moment. How can you hear someone singing in the theater?" At his prompt, everyone stopped talking. They all followed his direction and tried to listen towards the theater. The 5 or 6 people present then had all heard it. Someone was clearly singing in the theater. The singing was very, very clear. And everyone present then heard it distinctly, and they all unanimously agreed that it was not a Chinese song. It was clearly a Japanese song. When these children heard this, their curiosity was piqued. The group slowly began to approach the theater, planning to get closer and hear who was singing inside. After a few steps, they reached the old theater's window and crouched by the window, trying to peek inside to see who was singing the Japanese song. But after looking through the window, they found it was empty. Of course, it was late at night and very dark inside. Their visibility was very limited. since the singing hadn't stopped, and they couldn't see inside. Peeking at the window and not seeing anything inside, the children's curiosity grew even more. One of them suggested, "Let's go around to the front door and go inside to see who was singing in there." These children were also very mischievous. Plus, when there are more people, their courage grows. Slowly, they walked along the wall towards the main door of the theater. Fortunately, they hadn't entered the door yet when the strange thing happened. If they had gone inside and this strange thing occurred, these children would have been scared to death. These few children, having only walked a few steps from the door, suddenly heard from inside the theater a few phrases in Chinese. They immediately understood the Chinese words. It was clearly an older man, calling out two names: Jinhuan, Yinhuan. "Hurry up, get ready for the next scene. Yinhuan, quickly go change your costume. Today, you'll help Jinhuan rehearse for Xiaoqing." That terrifying shout instantly startled the children. It wasn't like the quiet music before, but a loud voice. The man's voice was rough and loud, as if he were shouting right next to their ears. These companions were no longer as relaxed as before. A few boys immediately grabbed hands. Suddenly, they were all scared. Earlier, we talked about the proposal. This person is one of them. When he told me, I thought to myself, okay, so has behaving now? Scared now that he's heard something real, huh? So, curiosity killed the cat. If you encounter something like this, run away if you can. There's no need to go and listen. These kids, they were terrified by the sound, scared out of their wits. They ran back into the main academic building. From then on, the story spread like wildfire in the school. These kids would definitely tell others about it. It got so bad that even teachers didn't dare go into the theater. Of course, the panic in the school wasn't just spread by those few kids. The theater itself was known to nearby residents as a haunted theater. Later on, for about half a year, the whole area was buzzing with this topic. Even the small shop at the entrance knew about it. Oh my, the theater is haunted. We've been here, running this shop for years. These students are pitiful. The school is also unethical. How could they buy this land for kids to go to school? The problem is, when these stories spread, the kids get curious and they ask questions. One day, while telling stories, his friends were eating at a barbecue stall not far from school. The barbecue owner was an older man and a longtime resident of the area. Seeing the kids constantly talking about this, the uncle couldn't help himself. The uncle wasn't too busy with his business at the time, so he came over and told them the historical stories about the theater. The uncle said, "Let me tell you, this was a Japanese theater back then. Although, initially, it was all Japanese opera performers. But later, we don't know why, but the Japanese started to like our Chinese folk songs too. Like Northeast's Air and Zhuan and such. We don't know if they understood or not. They brought in 2 opera troupes from somewhere. After bringing these 2 troupes, they were confined inside. It was like being imprisoned. Like going to jail, and they weren't allowed out. After a long time, back and forth, you're mistreating us like this. We Northeasterners can't handle this." One of the opera troupes was a group It's said his brother had some connection with anti-Japanese elements at the time. Grandma later told me that one of the groups was a hot-blooded man. He led these two troops, men and women included. One night, about that time, they clashed with the Japanese. It's said that night, guns were fired. The gunshots lasted from after 1 a.m. until 4 a.m. But we were just opera troops, not an army, and we were outnumbered. Both of these troops were killed by the Japanese inside the opera house. This was precisely because of this rather tragic event. From then on, the opera house was never peaceful again. Uncle Sam's vivid explanation captivated the children. They slapped their thighs, all exclaiming, "Oh, Uncle, we finally understand what happened." Uncle, I won't hide it from you. That day we listened from the bottom of the wall. We truly heard people shouting inside. Amidst the shouting, it seemed they were calling for 2 female opera singers. I don't know if you've heard of one named Jin Huan and another named Yin Huan. All right, everyone, the first story is finished. I've imitated some Northeastern accents in it. I am not from the Northeast, so it's not very good. Don't mislead anyone. Where did this story take place? Finally, I'll tell you in a low voice. This opera house is located in Shenyang. For those of you in Shenyang, have you heard of this? Also, please don't let my half-baked accent affect your listening. That concludes the main story for today. It's finished. I mentioned we have more than one story this time. This episode has another small story to tell. So, forget about the first one for now. We come quickly. Listen to this next one. This story was provided by a Mr. Wei, a great guy. He shared a story with us. He recounts when he was young, at the age of 11, one afternoon, he and his sister were in their hometown, picking tea leaves from a tea tree. I don't have personal experience with this, so I might be wrong. Please bear with me. It's said that this item, although it's a leaf, when picked from the tree, suck it with your mouth when it's fresh. It will release sweet juice. Many children in the countryside would rush to eat this when they were young. Since so many people want this, it's very scarce when it first sprouts. Plus, this thing only grows around the Qingming festival. It will sprout. These siblings, every year around Qingming, would search the village trees for these sweet leaves. Because in the village, adults and children had already picked them clean. The siblings were also very greedy. As they walked, they unknowingly walked out of the village. To why? Because at the village entrance, outside, there was a large area of trees that grew these. The siblings headed straight for it. But later, they recalled, when we grew up, we realized that area was where adults told us not to go. It was an old village burial ground. In that grove of trees, various large and small graves were hidden, and that grove was extremely ominous. It wasn't a proper burial site. It was full of unmarried girls and children who hadn't grown up. To put it bluntly, it was a mass grave. But we were so young then, we didn't think about it. We headed towards that grove and went there. When we arrived, my sister directed me to climb a tree and pick leaves. My sister kept watch below. She kept watch below, kept watch. At first, whenever I picked a handful, I'd throw it to my sister. But as I kept picking, I called out to my sister below, but she didn't respond. So, I started shouting at her, and I noticed she seemed to be staring blankly in one direction. Naturally, I followed my sister's gaze in that direction. Since I was up in the tree, my view was much clearer than hers. I could only see a very tall mound of earth in that direction. On top of this mound sat a woman dressed entirely in red. This woman was on the mound, combing her hair with a small comb. We both definitely saw her then. But at that moment, we just felt a little scared. The real climax of the story hadn't happened yet. Up in the tree, I started to cry a little and asked my sister, "Sister, is that a person? What is that?" My sister immediately whispered to me, "Let me get down quickly." As soon as I leaped, I jumped down from the tree. After jumping down, the two of us started to sneak into the woods. We wanted to quickly leave this area. Unexpectedly, just after walking less than 20 steps, the woman, as if by magic, suddenly appeared right in front of us. Because we were far away earlier, we only saw she was wearing red and had her hair done. Upon getting closer, this woman had a pale face, but her facial features were completely unclear to us. At this close distance, it's impossible not to see what she looked like. But we didn't know why. We could see the clothes she wore clearly. But whenever we looked at her face, it became exceptionally blurry. We were both terrified then. We turned around and ran around randomly in the woods. We felt like someone was following us from behind. We ran for at least 10 minutes before getting out of the woods. When we got home, because I was young then, and I don't mind you laughing, I had already wet my pants. After this incident, it was left unresolved. There was no answer. It was just a brief, small segment. But that woman's clothes at the time, and her appearance, have always stayed with me. Later, as I grew up, I recalled that we probably saw something we shouldn't have, because the clothes that person wore were simply not what modern people wear, although our village was quite backward. It was definitely the 90s then. No one would dress like that to go out. If you were in the city and liked cosplay, you might occasionally see it. But in our village, if you dressed like that, people would scold you. Everyone would scold you. Good evening, friends. The story I am telling tonight was provided by a young lady from Ningxia. It happened about 15 or 16 years ago. At that time, Xiao Dian was just in the 4th grade of elementary school. Xiao Dian was born in Ningxia, and in a small village in Ningxia, when attending school, she attended the village elementary school Xiao Dian attended. This school was not an ordinary school. Although it was run by the village, it had been operating for many years before. But it wasn't always an elementary school. It was a middle school. It was only later that this middle school was upgraded. It became a county-level class B school, I believe. So, within the county, they allocated a campus for them. This middle school then moved away. After it moved away, the school building became empty. What about the principal of their elementary school? They applied to the city. Whether they could give the junior high school to them, the city approved it. When the students reached the 3rd grade, the entire school moved to the junior high building to attend classes. But the students couldn't. Although the junior high school was very large, it was a good thing to move. However, students from surrounding villages were unwilling to come to the new campus. What was the reason? People for 100 miles around knew that this junior high school had a history of ghosts, and it was rumored that this junior high school was haunted. But friends, can these things be controlled by ordinary people? They can't. If you're afraid of ghosts and you don't want to come, don't enroll at Stay Home. So, the students couldn't. In the end, they had no choice but to attend elementary school in this junior high building. The students said that in the first few days of classes, everyone was anxious, but honestly, nothing scary happened. Plus, the elementary school teachers at the time said things that were frightening, and they were particularly attentive, so the teachers also controlled the students, preventing them from talking about such nonsense. After a few days, the students stopped mentioning the school's legends. But the good times didn't last. After about 2 months of school,